perpetrator exercises any or all of the powers attaching to the right of ownership over one or more persons, including the exercise of a power in the course of trafficking in persons, in particular women and children, and b. the perpetrator's conduct is committed intentionally or knowingly as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against a civilian population. Penalty: imprisonment for 25 years. 2. In subsection 1, exercises any or all of the powers attaching to the right of ownership over a person, includes purchases, sells, lends or barters a person, or imposes on a person a similar deprivation of liberty, and also includes exercise of power arising from a debt incurred, or contract made by a person. 268.11 Crime against humanity: deportation or forcible transfer of population. 1. A person: the perpetrator commits an offense if the perpetrator forcibly displaces one or more persons, by expulsion or other coercive acts, from an area in which the person or persons are lawfully present to another country or location, and b. the forcible displacement is contrary to paragraph 4 of Article 12 or Article 13 of the Covenant, and c. the perpetrator knows of, or is reckless as to, the factual circumstances that establish the lawfulness of the presence of the person or persons in the area, and d. the perpetrator's conduct is committed intentionally or knowingly as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against a civilian population. Penalty: imprisonment for 17 years. 2. Strict liability applies to paragraph 1b. 3. In subsection 1, forcibly displaces one or more persons includes displaces one or more persons, by threat of force or coercion such as that caused by fear of violence, duress, detention, psychological oppression or abuse of power against the person or persons or against another person, or b. by taking advantage of a coercive environment. 268.12 Crime against humanity: imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty. 1. A person: the perpetrator commits an offense if the perpetrator imprisons one or more persons, or otherwise severely deprives one or more persons of physical liberty, and b. the perpetrator's conduct violates Article 9, 14 or 15 of the Covenant, and c. the perpetrator's conduct is committed intentionally or knowingly as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against a civilian population. Penalty: imprisonment for 17 years. 2. Strict liability applies to paragraph 1b. Crimes Act 1914-Sect 43. Attempting to pervert justice. 1. A person commits an offense if the person attempts to obstruct, to prevent, to pervert or to defeat the course of justice in relation to a judicial power, and b. the judicial power is the judicial power of the Commonwealth. Penalty: imprisonment for 10 years. 2. Absolute liability applies to the paragraph 1b element of the offense. Note: for absolute liability, see section 6.2 of the Criminal Code. 3. For the person to be guilty of an offense against subsection 1, the person's conduct must be more than merely preparatory to the commission of the offense. The question, whether conduct is more than merely preparatory to the commission of the offense, is one of fact. For a person may be found guilty of an offense against subsection 1, even if doing the thing attempted is impossible. FYI, using Fiction Crimes Act 1914-Sect 85Q, forgery of postal messages, etc. 1. A person shall not forge a postal message. Penalty: imprisonment for 10 years. 2. A person shall not utter a postal message knowing it to be forged. Penalty: imprisonment for 10 years. 3. A person shall be taken to utter a forged postal message if the person tenders it or puts it off, or c. uses or deals with it, or he attempts to induce any person to use, deal with, act on or accept it. Crimes Act 1914-Sect 85 are all bills to the fiction not living man. Wrongful delivery of postal messages: a person shall not intentionally cause a postal message to be delivered to or received by a person other than the person to whom it is directed or that person's authorized agent. Penalty: imprisonment for 1 year. Crimes Act 1914-Sect 85T. Sending false postal messages. A person shall not, intentionally and without a person's authority, submit, or cause to be submitted, to Australia Post as a postal message signed, or to be sent by the person, a postal message that was not so signed or to be sent, be intentionally submit, or cause to be submitted, to Australia Post a postal message signed with the name of a fictitious person, see intentionally and without the authority of the person sending a postal message, alter the postal message, or intentionally write, issue or deliver a document purporting to be a postal message that has been carried by post knowing that it is not such a message. Penalty: imprisonment for 1 year. Crimes Act 1914-Sect 87. False certificates. Any person who, being authorized or required by a law of the Commonwealth, to give any certificate touching any matter by virtue whereof the rights of any person may be harmfully affected, gives a certificate which is, to his or her knowledge, false in any material particular, shall be guilty of an offense. Penalty: imprisonment for 2 years. Crimes Act 1914-Sect 91. Regulations. The Governor-General may make regulations, not inconsistent with this Act, prescribing all matters required or permitted by this Act to be prescribed, or necessary or convenient to be prescribed, for carrying out or giving effect to this Act. Commonwealth Consolidated Acts. Crimes Act 1914-Sect 3. Interpretation 1. In this Act, unless the contrary intention appears, Aboriginal person means the person of the Aboriginal race of Australia. ACC means the Australian Crime Commission. Associated offence means, in relation to an offence against Section 233B of the Customs Act 1901, an ancillary offence within the meaning of the Criminal Code, that relates to the offence, or be in relation to an offence against Section 10, 11, 12, 13 or 14 of the Crimes Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1990, an ancillary offence within the meaning of the Criminal Code, that relates to the offence, or c. in relation to an offence against a law of a state or territory. An offence, I under a provision of a law of that state or territory, that corresponds to a provision of Part 2.4 of the Criminal Code, and ei that relates to the offence. Australian law enforcement officer means a law enforcement officer other than a member of a police force, or other law enforcement agency, of a foreign country. Bail authority means a court or person authorized to grant bail under a law of the Commonwealth, a state or a territory. Child, without limiting who is a child of a person for the purposes of this Act. Someone is the child of a person, if he or she is a child of the person within the meaning of the Family Law Act 1975. Child abuse material has the same meaning, as in Part 10.6 of the Criminal Code. Child pornography material has the same meaning, as in Part 10.6 of the Criminal Code. Commissioner means the Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police. Commonwealth child sex offence means an offence against any of the following provisions of the Criminal Code. I Division 272 child sex offences outside Australia, EI Division 273 offences involving child pornography material or child abuse material outside Australia, EI Subdivisions B and C of Division 471, which create offences relating to use of postal or similar services in connection with child pornography material, child abuse material and sexual activity involving children, IV Subdivisions D and F of Division 474, which create offences relating to use of telecommunications in connection with child pornography material, child abuse material and sexual activity involving children, or be an offence against Section 11.1, 11.4 or 11.5 of the Criminal Code, that relates to an offence described in paragraph of this definition, or c. an offence against a provision described in paragraph of this definition, that is taken to have been committed because of Section 11.2, 11.2 or 11.3 of the Criminal Code. Note, Part IE also applies as if offences against certain other provisions in force, before the commencement of that part where Commonwealth child sex offenses, see Schedule 2 to the Crimes Legislation Amendment Sexual Offenses Against Children Act 2010. Commonwealth offense, except in Part IC, means an offense against a law of the Commonwealth. Commonwealth officer means a person holding office under, or employed by, the Commonwealth, and includes a person appointed or engaged under the Public Service Act 1999, a person permanently or temporarily employed in the public service of a territory or in connection with, the Defence Force, or in the service of a public authority under the Commonwealth, be the Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police, a Deputy Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police, an AFP employee or a special member of the Australian Federal Police, all within the meaning of the Australian Federal Police Act 1979, and C for the purposes of Section 70, a person who, although not holding office under, or employed by, the Commonwealth, a territory or a public authority under the Commonwealth, performs services for or on behalf of the Commonwealth, a territory or a public authority under the Commonwealth, and D for the purposes of Section 70I, a person who is an employee of the Australian Postal Corporation. EI, a person who performs services for or on behalf of the Australian Postal Corporation, and EI, an employee of a person who performs services for or on behalf of the Australian Postal Corporation. Constable means a member or special member of the Australian Federal Police or a member of the police force or police service of a state or territory. Controlled substance means a controlled drug or border-controlled drug within the meaning of Part 9.1 of the Criminal Code, or be a controlled plant or border-controlled plant within the meaning of Part 9.1 of the Criminal Code, or C a controlled precursor or border-controlled precursor within the meaning of Part 9.1 of the Criminal Code. Conveyance includes an aircraft, vehicle or vessel. Criminal detention has the meaning given by Section 45A. Cultural heritage has the same meaning as in the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, and includes sacred sites. Cultural heritage object means an object that is important for cultural, religious, ethnological, archaeological, historical, literary, artistic, scientific or technological reasons. Data includes A, information in any form, and B, any program or part of a program. Data storage device means a thing containing, or designed to contain, data for use by a computer. De facto partner has the meaning given by the Act's Interpretation Act 1901. Defense Department means the Department of State that deals with defense, and that is administered by the Minister administering Section 1 of the Defense Act 1903. Dentist means a dental practitioner within the meaning of the Health Insurance Act 1973. Deputy Commissioner means a Deputy Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police. Federal aspect, in relation to an offence against a law of a state or of the Australian Capital Territory, has the meaning given by subsection 3A1. Note, this subsection defines state to include the Northern Territory. Federal court means the High Court or a court created by the Parliament, other than a court of a territory. Federal criminal detention has the meaning given by Section 45A. Federal judicial proceeding has the meaning given by Section 31. Foreign Affairs Department means the department administered by the Minister administering the Diplomatic Privileges and Immunities Act 1967. Foreign Affairs Minister means the Minister administering the Diplomatic Privileges and Immunities Act 1967. Have in possession includes having under control in any place whatever, whether for the use or benefit of the person of whom the term is used or of another person, and although another person has the actual possession or custody of the thing in question. Illicit goods means